welcome everyone. My name is Anna Grzymala-Busse. I'm the director of the Europe Center, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this informational session about the graduate research and internship program in Germany. The format is going to be, I'll talk very briefly about the program. We then have several students who've participated or who, because of COVID, have had to defer their internships. And they'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes about their experiences, and then we'll take your questions and answers. So the internship program, just to give you a brief introduction, is really intended both for research and for industry. So we sort of welcome both kinds of experiences. If you already have identified your own internship, that's great. We're happy to support that. But we also have the support of Antonia Fore, who is a marvelous, there she is, who is marvelous at finding and matching students to internships and can work with your interests to really develop those. So there are sort of 2 pathways to an internship. And we've had these internships for a few years now. Each year we receive anywhere from 40 to 60 applications, and we can fund roughly 8 to 10 interns. So we're very happy to be participating in this program. It's been, I think, very rewarding for the students who've participated in it. And I'll now turn it over to the students. And we will hear from Rahul Trevidi, Samantha Liu, Sarah Mitchell, Harsh Patel, Yuyang Wang, and Amber Harper. And Alex Mejia will arrive late, so we'll hear from him a bit later. But let me turn it over to Rahul right now, who again will sort of describe his experiences and tell you what he knows in about 2 or 3 minutes. Rahul?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, hi. So I am Rahul. I'm an electrical engineering PhD student. And I participated in the GRIP program this year, and I was working as it was a research visit, sorry, what was supposed to be a research visit in Max Planck Institute in Munich for quantum information. So it was, my work is related to quantum technologies, and I was going to work with the professor at Max Planck Institute. But of course, I couldn't go there in person, so I had to do it remotely. I will briefly just tell you how I set up my remote work, how I worked remotely with my professor. So in my case, it was an easier task than maybe some of the other people who might need to be there physically for doing experiments, or their work requires physical presence. So I work mostly on theoretical and computational problems. So my work was done in front of a computer, so I could easily do my work from home. And so the biggest hurdle in doing my work remotely over last summer was really to just set up meetings and be involved with the research group that I was supposed to be working with in terms of their, group meetings, project meetings, and interacting with them. So I was typically working with 1 or 2 postdoctoral candidates in my supervisor's lab, and we would, and they were very accommodating. So even though our meeting times were somewhat uncomfortable, so early morning for me and a bit late night for them, we were still able to set up weekly meetings in which we could go and talk about our research. Unfortunately, I could not attend all of their group meetings, project meetings, and seminars that I would have liked to had I gone there in person, but I was able to attend 1 or 2 seminars that were especially interesting to me, although the timing was a bit off. So, in terms of meeting with my supervisor and a select few students, I was able to set them up on a pretty regular basis, but I kind of missed out on experiencing the full research life as I would have had I gone there, but I think it was still a great experience and really added to my summers. Yeah, so other than that, I think I feel that my internship was successful, so I'm quite happy with the outcome of this project. Yes, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rahul. Next, we'll hear from Samantha Liu. Samantha?
Hi, yeah, so I was one of the students who decided to defer my summer internship, so I'll be mainly discussing my experience with Antonia and Karen. They were just a joy to work with. As soon as you get accepted, Antonia reached out and she was saying, oh, we can connect you with all these different companies. And she was just super open to reaching out to my companies of choices that I expressed in my application, in addition to offering some new alternatives based on what I've expressed my interests are. She was so nice, and she even offered I could connect you with my cousin back in Germany, and there's even some speaking partners that they all offered to help me kind of be more integrated into the culture and just be more comfortable. And I was really excited to go on to this experience, but unfortunately, yeah, COVID happened. But overall, I still enjoyed like working with Antonia and like Karen and just like the rest of the team here.
Sorry, my unmute button didn't work. And next we have Sarah Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a master's student in electrical engineering, and specifically my focus is in robotics and robotics for aerospace applications. So when I applied to the GRIP program, I had found what's called the DLR, which is the German Aerospace Center. It's basically their country's version of NASA. So that was very intriguing to me, and I mentioned that in my application. And then, like Samantha said, when I got accepted, I was working with Antonia. She helped me reach out because, you know, like NASA, they have different locations all over Germany with different specializations. So Antonia helped me reach out to a couple different places and helped me find the one that I was really most interested in, which is their robotics institute in Munich. And I was able to get a internship set up there on a robotics project that I was really interested in. And so similarly, because it's robotics and hardware, it doesn't lend itself to remote very well. So I have also postponed my visit until next summer. And Antonia has, you know, helped formalize the process of talking to my host and making sure that they are all in agreement and we're all on the same page of what's going to happen next summer. So it was a great process of, you know, figuring out where to go, and they do a really great job of leading you through the steps and making sure that there's a good balance of, you know, figuring out what to do and then helping assist you do that and talk to the host. So I haven't gone yet, but it was a great experience so far.
Wonderful. Harsh?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Harsh. I'm a PhD student in the Aeronautics department here. My research mainly focuses on computational modeling using CFD and finite element analysis. But my internship, which also was deferred to next year, is a little different than what my main research focus is. So I was gonna go also work at DLR, at the Institute of Aerospace Medicine in Cologne, Germany. And the whole idea was to immerse myself in a more experimental type of role for this internship. So the idea was to use this internship to study how exposure to low oxygen, low pressure environments affects the physiological aspects of your body. Things like how your body adapts to these extreme environments, whether it's at very high altitudes, extreme ocean depths, or ultimately for me, I'm like Sarah, I'm also interested on the space side. So I wanted to see how we can use these measurements and research techniques and apply them for protocols in space. In terms of securing or identifying the internship and securing it, I guess I'm a bit unique in that sense that I already had an idea of where I wanted to go before I even applied to the program, which I don't think is very typical, but another student who went through this great program a couple years prior to me also did the same exact type of work. And so the goal of my internship would have been to extend that further and continue that collaboration.
Thank you, Arsh. Next we have Yuyang Wang.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yuyang. I am a second-year PhD student from the Stanford Archaeology Center and also the ELC department. I work on archaeology of Neolithic China, and my interests are ceramic production and technological developments, and also the migration patterns of early China. And so far, I've been trying to work with ceramic data from China, but with the migration pattern, the best way to work is with ancient DNA. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it shows how people migrated. It doesn't have to be human, it can be like animals and all that. So for my internship, I really wanted to work with the Max Planck Institute in Vienna, for science and human history. So before I applied for this internship, I talked to a friend who visited Jena a few summers ago, and I talked to two professors from Jena and made sure that it's possible. And they had this program of taking visiting scholars and students for the summer. So once I got accepted, similar to Harsh, I guess, I knew where I wanted to go and how I should, talk to them and all that. And after I got accepted, Antonia helped me to communicate with the archaeogenetic department to make sure that everything's set up, it's possible. But unfortunately, COVID happened, and the archaeogenetic team was such an international, has like many international members from Canada, from the US, and from Italy, I guess. And unfortunately, they were not at Germany at the time, so we couldn't find so much information from them. But we kept communicating with them, and I think by March we secured my spot. But for next year, because the thing I want to do involves a lot of lab works and hands-on experience, and obviously we can do that online. So the internship is for next year as well.
Yeah, this is the sad story of COVID, right? Next we have Amber Harper.
I don't think she's joined us yet. She
hasn't joined us yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that here? Okay, great. So in that case, why don't we open it up to Q&A? We also have Alex and Mejia who'll come in at 11:30. So when Alex and Amber get here, we'll turn to them. But in the meantime, if you have questions, please put these forth. Okay. Okay, so the first question is whether it's possible to have the email ID of the students who are part of GRIP. I think if that's okay with you guys, with the panelists, if you could just nod or somehow let us know, then absolutely. Yeah, I think anybody who wants to share the email should be able to. Sure. Okay, other questions?
I think, Anna, it might be useful, and probably, the students and applicants have some good visibility on the program, but, the overarching program objectives in terms of, facilitating exchange between Germany and the US and fostering the transatlantic bridge and so on, in addition to the pure, research-oriented tasks might be useful for them to appreciate.
Sure. So, I mean, Jan, thank you, Jan. That's very helpful. So this project is very much, a part of a broader effort to really integrate the sort of both industry and scholarly communities in Germany with the United States. And it's all, I think, more important, given that Stanford is, sort of on the wrong coast for Europe in the minds of some people. We're not as visible in Europe as we should be. And so this is a wonderful way of sort of, it's not just about sort of the individual exchange of students or sending students over there, but about building sort of longer lasting collaborations and longer lasting networks and relationships that are sort of facilitated with, the next generation of scholarship, the next generation of innovation, research and development. So we're very much hoping that this is, that's the overarching goal of the project. And the internships are sort of a way of building these networks and really building out these connections. And I think one of the things that I've heard from a lot of students who've come back from these internships is that they've gained really important experiences in how industry, for example, functions in Germany, but also whole new networks of collaborators. So there have been several papers who've come out of these internships, new longer lasting scholarly collaborations. There's been a lot of sort of mutual research exchanges that have been done. So this is, this is kind of a starting point to broader opportunities, both individually and I think collectively, between Stanford and the German industry and scholarly communities. Jan, would you like to add anything?
I think that is great. And Sheri Sheppard, Professor Sheri Sheppard is also here, who probably for more than 20 years, right, has been in Europe and Germany every summer. And maybe Sheri, if you have anything to add from your perspective.
I would say this internship research opportunity for graduate students really had its inception among a group, a very thoughtful group of Stanford alum who are connected to Germany, and it said, how can we round out our connections with Germany through this program that all of you are showing interest in. I would say it also complements a really strong undergraduate program as well. And so that program consists of both a Stanford Center in Berlin that a number of our students go over and study in the fall, winter, or spring. And they're taking classes, they're learning to speak German, they're learning a lot about Berlin. And then a large subset of that group then is placed in industry all across Germany, or company or organizations. And so there's a person that partners with Antonia who's actually thinking about that with undergraduates. And in that group, you know, that we might have a theater major who wants to, you know, be placed and do an internship in the theater world. We also have a number of engineering students who want to, you know, work at BMW. So you're not just isolated as graduate students helping create that connection. There's also a group of undergraduates who are playing a similar role in building relationships. And, you know, I'm glad, you know, I'm sorry to hear for those of you who were supposed to go last summer that you didn't get to go. I'm really excited that you're going to be going this coming summer. I'm hopefully going to be in Munich, working with the Technical University in Munich, and it's a beautiful city. And then I'm hopefully going to be teaching at the Berlin campus in the spring. So I might hopefully be in Germany for 6 months. And it's an amazing culture. I'm still working on German, and I'd be interested in those of you who've gone through the process of applying, you know, what's with the language? Are you thinking you'll be doing your work in English? But it's a beautiful language. It's a really hard language. And the bakeries are super.
So we have several questions, and what I suggest we do is that I will try to answer these, but if any of the other panelists would like to jump in, please unmute yourselves, and I very much want people to have the opportunity to answer as well. So the first question is whether it's possible to work, or get the internship if you don't have specific labs you want to work with. Absolutely. What we want basically is sort of, you know, a clearly stated statement of interest. What is it that you want to do? What do you hope to accomplish? How being in Germany would benefit? What are some of the resources in Germany that would make it possible for you to pursue your project? And then Antonia works very closely with the internship recipients to make sure that there's a good fit between what your sort of project is, what your academic interests are, and what is available in Germany. Okay. How does housing work? Antonia, would you mind answering that question? I think you're best suited to.
Yeah, housing, there are many different options. Sometimes a German institute like the Max Planck Institute offers housing for the students as for their faculty or researchers. Sometimes you are maybe affiliated with a German university, which also has housing for international students in all kinds of fashion and modes. Maybe you work with industry, maybe you're in a big city, then you would just go and do very similar what you would do here in the States. You would find an apartment. You could either find that through the university, still housing with university students, but independently, or you're just on the housing market. In either case, I would always be there. We would explore the situation on site and find what is best for your specific situation, what you had in mind, live alone, live with people. We can make it all happen. So no worries there. But you could also, I would recommend, look at our question and answer information sheets that are linked to our application page on the Europe Center's website. It answers many questions. If you have any questions with regard to, do I need to know German when I apply? No, not necessarily, but we would hope and expect that you make an effort before you leave for Germany, that you know how to buy bread or order a glass of wine. You're a graduate student, right? And, but I could, for example, refer to Yuyang, who took this last summer when he could not go to Jena and applied for an intensive German language program at Middlebury College. And maybe Yuyang, you could say something. Do you feel prepared now to go to Germany?
Sure. Yeah, it it was such a fun experience. I loved it. And to get myself prepared for next summer, so I think the majority of my internship will be done in English, as everybody at UNM speaks English, and a lot of their research were done in English as well. But I've visited Germany 3 times, and I feel like I've done all the touristy or the outsider thing. And this time, since I would love to be there for like 3 months, and I would love to be an insider, I guess, to feel the local culture and to be to try to be local. So that was my goal for this summer, to get myself used to the German sound and the German culture and all that. So I was really happy that I had this big chunk of time, because otherwise it's really difficult to find a whole summer not doing anything. So yeah, it was great.
And as you can tell, there's a running thread here of bakeries, bread, pastries. Okay, so next question about the degree progress and whether GRIP would delay it. So the internship program is not supposed to delay your progress to degree. I think a lot of this depends on what field you find yourself in. If you are in a lab intensive field where your advisor expects you to spend the entire summer in your lab, then this may not be the best fit. If on the other hand, you're exploring new research projects, new sort of industry connections, new areas for research, then it shouldn't delay your degree to progress. At least we've seen no evidence that that happens. But again, you know, your mileage may vary, right? A lot of this depends on what the expectations of your particular degree program are, you know, and what the demands of your degree is. Let's see. What are some of the suggestions you have for structuring a statement if you're hoping to work on something a little outside of your research? I think, you know, so part of the reason for these internships is to sort of allow people to explore areas that aren't necessarily the core of their research projects here at Stanford. And so the way I think those are best structured is to talk about what your core research areas are, talk about how an internship in a slightly different area would both benefit you and your colleagues in Germany, right? And so, you know, if, for example, if you are working on, I'm not sure, climate change, right? And you want to explore an internship in engineering to sort of see what kind of solutions industry is coming up with to problems of climate change. That's totally great. We want to see those connections, and we want to see exactly how you hope to benefit and how your colleagues in Germany might benefit. You don't necessarily have to, again, you don't have to identify exactly where you'll be doing your internship. You know, it's fine if you do. In fact, we welcome applications that already have a specified lab or industry placement. But Antonia is amazing at finding the right placement and the right fit between projects, students, and our German collaborators. Okay, yes, Antonia, please.
Maybe I can just add to that, that sometimes your statement was very succinct and convincing, and you accomplished in receiving an award. But then when you look at what is out there as opportunities, you feel that this is actually not really, or you find something more enticing, then there's no reason not to go with that. And also sometimes what you had in mind, and you might have even reached out to an institute or an organization, but you have not exactly made contact, and it's not secured, and it falls through. That should not be a discouragement, because just there are many, many opportunities that you might not even be aware of. And I just want to emphasize that we can find those, and we have so far always found very suitable and beneficial placements for the students.
Okay, so there's a question about what if you're a first year at Stanford and how to reach out, you know, to faculty for recommendation, faculty who don't know you very well. I think the best way to do that is to have faculty who can attest to sort of your overall capacity. You don't necessarily have, you obviously won't have an advisor who will be able to speak to your research project, but we want to hear from faculty about what sort of, you know, your potential as a researcher is, what your potential as an intern in industry would be, you know, whatever you choose to do. And so we want to hear both sort of, you know, about basic research and industry qualifications rather than speaking to the project itself. And we've had some students who've been able to do this after their first year. Some students find it easier to apply for the internship once they've had, you know, 1 or 2 years under their belt, but either path seems to work. Okay, so there are several questions here about successful applications and what do we look for. And I'll of course turn to Jan and Antonia as well, but I think overall, what we are most looking for is, first of all, a clear statement about what you hope to achieve. And again, it doesn't have to be a specific lab or a specific industry placement, but it has to be a clear statement about why you're applying and why this is the right program for you, what you hope to achieve. If you already have a dissertation or a thesis project, how that sort of works off of or works with that project, and evidence that you would do well in Germany, right? That you are, you have some experience in establishing collaborations, in working with labs, in being able to adjust to a very different life context. So I think those are the main things that we're looking for. But above all, and we're looking both for the applications and in the interview for sort of an articulation of both of how you could stand to benefit from this program and what you would bring to the table and how you would bring the build those connections between Germany and the United States. Jan, Antonia, Sheri, would you like to add something to that? So,
yeah, as I could only confirm what Anna said. We definitely look at you in a holistic way. Karen had once coined that. That is, we take all the academic credentials and the way you present your project, the way you can convince us that you are the right person to go to Germany and kind of pursue our mission, but also benefit academically and for your career from receiving that scholarship. I think a way to approach it, no matter what year you are in your academic program or career, is just to talk with as many mentors or advisors or professors that you can, or peers, and that will help you formulate and think through what you would like to do in Germany and how you could best pull that together and present it to us.
I might add, being able to show intent, that there's something you're passionate about and interested in, but also flexibility. Because I think we're in a world today, it's actually been true for some time, that things don't work out exactly, so if you're so set on one thing, I think in some ways that could be a negative, because you may need to pivot a little bit more or expand, or, whether that be in terms of how you find housing, or there not being exactly a perfect fit. And I found with my collaborations in general, but we're talking about Germany, the unexpected is amazing. Something you didn't know in terms of how papers were written, or how meetings were run, and if you go in with an attitude that's part of the experience, my mind is going to be expanded. I think it's even more powerful.
Jan, would you like to add anything?
I think that nothing much to add. I think what we would like to emphasize is that if you don't have a defined project, right, it's still fine to apply. I think to Sheri's and then Anna, to your point, I mean, it's preferable, or it's nice to have a project if you have something already outlined, but otherwise it's completely fine to just explain what you would like to possibly explore and why Germany, or why this program really would benefit you. So don't be shied away if you don't have a specific research project for this summer, but just outline what you'd be interested in.
Right. And so now we also have several questions, speaking of flexibility and the unexpected, about COVID and how we're going to adjust for that. So I think there are two things to mention here. One is we usually have interviews in person, because our interviews will be held in January, on January 12th and 13th for the finalists. We will do them via Zoom. I don't think there's any way that Stanford is going to let us do this in person, nor would it be particularly safe to do so yet. As for next summer, we are operating with the assumption that by next summer, by the end of June, basically, things will be enough back to normal that these fellowships will be possible. If that's not the case, then we will pursue both virtual internships and the possibility of deferment for another year, which is definitely less than ideal. But we want to have for you to have the kind of internship experience that this was intended to provide. So we will be basically flexible. We are going to be working with the assumptions that this is possible for next summer, but you ought to be aware that that may not be the case, right? That, depending on how the pandemic is moving, we may have to either defer or to have virtual internships. So I want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Okay. Let's see, is Alex here yet, Karen? He is? Great. That's perfect, because we had a question about what the participants' experiences are with language and cultural barriers in working in these positions. So Alex, if you wouldn't mind sharing your experience, that would be terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me join a little late. I think I was on the end of the spectrum of people who had little to no German language experience and were basically starting from the ground up. I tried to get into a introductory German language course at Stanford the quarter before I left, but unfortunately couldn't do that. So I was left to sort of learning using some of the online applications and some of the informal language groups that I was able to find on websites like Meetup. And then so that gave me something, and once I got to Germany and worked and connected with the folks who were, my internship mentor, some of the community of people that were around him, I was able to pick up a lot of useful kind of interactional phrases and learn. I felt like I learned a lot, given that I had not had any type of intensive language preparation prior to that. And I was able to make do. It would have been, obviously, I would have gotten a different experience if I had had a whole lot of German language competency, but I was still able to make the best out of it. So I think that, yeah, I think that even folks who are on my end of the continuum can still have a really, really meaningful experience.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. Let's see, we have a question about first-year students who don't have an official transcript yet on what they can do. What we would ask is that, yes, you can submit your undergraduate transcript, but you also basically, as soon as you receive your first unofficial transcript, to please send us along so we can update your application form. And there's another question here about sort of the spectrum of fields from which interns have been selected. This has been everything from aerospace engineering, chemical engineering, and so on. Computer science, those fields. There have been work in musicology, in sociology, in history, in educational linguistics, which is what Alex is from. So it's really a wide range. We do tend to have quite a few engineering placements, because those are people who are most interested in placement in industry and who can easily identify a lab to work with. But we welcome applications from all fields, and we strive to make sure that it's not just any one field that gets all the internships. So we urge if no matter where you're applying from, to please submit a proposal if you're interested. Okay, so we have a question about whether fewer students will be admitted for 2021 because of the number of deferred internships from 2020. There will not be a smaller number. I think all of those slots have already been secured, and we'll simply transfer them. We have both the funding and the logistics to transfer them to the next year. I think with this, I think if Antonia, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the students have already made sure that those deferrals hold for next year.
Yes, they do, as long as also the students will still be on board.
Right, of course. Yeah, it's a mutual
yes.
obligation. So we're not anticipating that we'll award fewer internships for this year. I think it'll be the same number, and hopefully, this will work out the way we plan it to. Okay, the application's naming firms. Is it appropriate to mention multiple firms if we have multiple interests? Yes, absolutely. You can mention multiple firms, multiple research labs, multiple research sites. The one thing that we ask is that this doesn't mean that you have, 5 different research projects involving 5 very different research institutes. It's better if you have a general sense of what you want to do, and you already know that there are, however many places where you could do this. Because I think that makes for a more coherent application, one that's more likely to be successful, and it also makes it much easier for us to be able to match you with a slot. Okay, more questions. Is this a good opportunity to do preliminary social ethnographic research? So yes, if you can find a research institute or a research lab or sort of, a specific setting where you can do this. These aren't really intended to sort of be, soak and poke internships where we basically, let you loose in Germany for 8 weeks. We're more concerned with sort of, again, building institutional bridges. So applications that can show that you have some kind of, an interest in a specific set of institutions or industry or labs or universities are more likely to be successful, because then there's a reason, there's a way to build those connections. We're not necessarily going to be, it's not going to be so easy for us to just fund soak and poke, as they're known, internships where you just travel and do exploratory research that isn't connected to either faculty or to professors. Yeah. Sherry, yes?
I joined and a caveat and something to be thinking about is IRB related to collecting data. That's right. Germany has a very strong data protection set of rules that are different than our IRB. So any of that would really need to be thought about well in advance to think about what data can be collected to use in research that involves human subjects.
Yeah. And again, this is where the institutional connections are really helpful, because you will then have a chance to work with faculty and students who are very experienced in obtaining those approvals and who know how to navigate the privacy and data protection laws in Germany. Because those all have to, it all has to be above board, and that all has to be cleared before you can do the research. Okay, would it be possible to reach out to out-of-Stanford contacts for recommendations? We would prefer that you give Stanford faculty recommendations or Stanford recommendations at any rate. If, however, you're a first year, then of course we understand, and you should, it's fine to get recommendations from non-Stanford faculty. How many faculty recommendations are required or suggested? I think, so that kind of information, all the sort of, particularities of the application forms, the application questions, the length of the essay, and so on, can be found on the website. And Karen has already posted the agenda up top in the comments. And you can have sort of, you can find past participant reports, the online, so frequently asked questions, and all the information about the specifics of the application form at our website. What fraction of GRIP applicants are funded? So on a given year, we've received anywhere from 40 to 60 or so applications, and we have room for 8 to 10 internships, depending on sort of, what the length of the internships are and what the qualifications of the candidates are. So, that basically means that anywhere from a fourth to a sixth of the applications will be funded. Okay. Do you have advice on how to investigate, establish, and present the benefit that our participation would have to our German collaborators? I think, what we're looking for, it's not necessarily sort of, I will co-author a paper with my German collaborator and this is the benefit that they'll obtain. This is much more about, I would like to be, for example, at the Aerospace Engineering Institute in this particular city, because there are, they have the techniques, they have the capacities, they have the sort of opportunities that I can't get here at Stanford, but I know are there in Germany. And I sort of, can on the other hand, bring my sort of training here from Stanford to my German collaborators. That's more of what we're looking for. You don't have to be specific about the kind of benefits you bring. We would like you to, however, think broadly and deeply about why you'd want to go to Germany and why you'd want an internship in that setting. Okay. Is it possible to complete the internship in any other quarter other than the summer? I don't think so. I think there was one exception when somebody extended their stay. And Antonia and Karen, you can correct me here, but I think we tend to fund summer-only internship.
Yes, it is a summer-only internship.
And Antonia, there was the one person who I think extended it for a few weeks into October.
It was not an extension, but that student, it was our first year and we explored still whether this would be possible. Right. She went during the fall quarter because she was busy with conferences and other academic issues. But it turned out to be quite difficult. And then Karen and I, we decided this is not worth it. We should really focus on the summer. And so this is what it is.
That's right. And I think, and Antonia and Alex can speak to this a bit more, but I think there's also a sense in which if there's a summer cohort, you will have each other's addresses and phone numbers, and you can visit each other and see each other, and there's more of a sense of community, especially if there's more than one intern in a given city. And that's part of the reason why we decided to keep it in the summer. So there's more of a cohesive cohort as well, with the possibility, at least, for those kinds of interactions. I think the student who did it in the fall found it a very lonely experience. But Antonia, Alex, do you have any comments on sort of the summer cohort and if there's any sort of interactions?
I don't know, Alex, whether you want to, so Alex was actually also quite busy. You went to at least 2 conferences and traveled, right? But
yeah, but I actually didn't connect in Germany with the cohort, but I almost did, and I was really grateful that they were there, and there was some back and forth communication that was nice to have that sort of like network as a possibility. And I could imagine that it would have been, if we had been maybe overlapping a little bit more in some of our research interests, that there would have been some interesting ways to collaborate while there.
Yeah, I could add that I think we tried many different avenues to bring students together. Some students expressed, and it was more kind of dealt with on a personal basis before, wanted to have a student buddy at the city that they were at. Let's say they would be at TUM as a technical university in Munich. I would find them in another German student who would like to be their language buddy, their social buddy, or they would join then a hiking group or whatever. So there are definitely many options. I think what is new as the program is growing, and I would maybe even add to Anne saying we are trying to expand, and I hope Jan would not would support that we're thinking of growing the program and maybe even having funding and the opportunity to accept 12 students this year. So don't feel discouraged by the high number of interested students. What I would also like to add is that we have reached out to many associations that focus on Germany. For example, you might not be aware that on Stanford campus, there is the Stanford German Student Association, which is very active and has already included our students in some events and activities. There is also, once you get to Germany, part of the Stanford Alumni Association, an abroad program in many cities with many different activities. There are alumni that in the past have then invited students for dinner, if I could connect them. So we are very open and flexible and creative. And for this year, we're looking for example, language buddies between Stanford as applicants and going abroad next summer, and the Stanford German student community, students that are here, graduate students, maybe from the town that you will actually be interning at next year, to meet for coffee or Zoom and speak. So there are many different ways how we interconnect and kind of help you to prepare for your internship.
Thank you, Antonia. Okay, so we have a few more questions. Do we prioritize industry or academia? Neither. I think this originally, the internship aspect of it was very much set up with industry in mind. But since then we've expanded, and so, if it's a research project, if it's an academic one or an industry related one, we are all very flexible about the exact nature of the project. Another question is about whether students have could leave their host institute for a week to attend a summer school or a conference. So I think that you should negotiate with your host institute and your host faculty. I think, the intention of the internship is to spend time in Germany in a solid block that allows you to accomplish some chunk of research or an intern experience. But of course, if you have to leave for the weekend or a few days, if it's okay with your host institution, we certainly aren't going to object. Karen?
Maybe Alex will talk a little bit. I think Alex, you went to a conference, didn't you? Or?
Yeah, I went to a few conferences with two of them outside of Germany with the German team that I was with, and it was a great experience to sort of get like sort of see the role of some of the German researchers that I was in community with in this sort of broader European context. And so I think it can be a really useful way to sort of like accentuate the German focus by seeing the role of German researchers in this sort of international community. And there were I went to a couple of conferences within Germany too, outside of the city that I was in, that were also like incredibly useful and to this day have shaped the trajectory of my own work. So and some of those weren't, they were not conferences that I knew about beforehand. I knew about some of them, but so some of the opportunities that came up throughout the course of the internship became really valuable.
Thanks, Alex.
I could maybe also add that we had, for example, a student last year who worked in material science in Aachen. Her dream job was, however, one day to work for Nike, for Adidas. So we reached out to Adidas and she was invited to give a talk on the subject that she was doing research on, meet the team of engineers in research and development. She got an intensive tour of their lab and met the team, the future team as it's called, and is in contact and hopefully will realize her dream job once at Adidas. But Aachen was very accommodating. Aachen, actually, the research lab there worked closely with Adidas, and they gave her these days off. And they were part of her internship in the end, because she could fruitfully communicate between two research teams. So there are lots of opportunities and options.
Right, and I think, as both Alex and Antonia emphasized, this is something that's done in conjunction with the internship, right? So it's something that's very much done with cooperation with the Research Institute and the faculty with whom you'll be working. Okay, let's just see. Timing and how the summer quarter interacts with the German university academic calendar. German universities start on October 1st, I believe, as do almost all universities in Europe. And so it actually interacts very nicely because basically we start just a week before they do. And so that's, I don't think we have not had an issue with an internship timing not working out. And is there any opportunity for funding to include travel and/or housing for a spouse or significant other? The money we give is a stipend that's intended to support the internship holder. But of course, if you are extremely thrifty and there's money left over and you would like to subsidize a spouse or a partner, that's perfectly fine with us. There won't be an increase in the amount of money given. It's the same lump sum that's given to all interns or all intern grantees. But how you make use of that money and whether you choose to spend it on an air ticket for your spouse or partner, that's up to you. Yes, Antonia.
That the scholarship is generous. I think that living expenses in Germany are quite cheaper than Silicon Valley. So I think if you would be rewarded with a scholarship and would go to Germany, we could make it work. I would definitely assist you in finding accommodation and telling you where to shop for groceries. So I think this should not defer you from applying.
Okay, there's a question whether the company pays for your internship or is that supposed to be covered by the stipend? So what has tended to happen in the past is that we basically cover the stipend. There are some, because the internship program, so the idea of internships in industry is much more sort of developed in Germany than it is in the United States. There are many firms who just automatically give a stipend to the intern. And in those situations, we've sort of tended to, depending on the size of that stipend and the size of our stipend, to sort of either lower slightly our amount or just simply work with the intern. So it depends on the situation and sort of, and how much money is involved. If it's possible for us to preserve our funding so we can fund another student, that's great. But we certainly don't want to penalize anyone for getting an internship that's also paid by industry. Okay. And I think that also, there's also another question whether GRIP funding can be added on top of other sources of funding. So again, it depends on what those other sources are. If you get a research fellowship from your department from another source to pursue research in Germany, that's totally fine. You can combine that research funding. If it's a sort of a salary like with an internship from industry, then I think we'd like to sort of coordinate a bit more than that. So I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A box, but I was wondering if I could, if any of the panelists have sort of, if there's something we missed, if there's something that you really want to convey, then this would be a great time to do that. So maybe we can just go in the order that I have you on my screen, starting with Antonia.
Well, maybe I can say something about how once you have received a scholarship, how we proceed usually. We meet probably via Zoom this time, and we come up what we call an action plan. That means I listen again very intensely what you would like to pursue in Germany. You then are expected to do some homework and come up with where you would find a suitable placement, where you see a position. Sometimes there is already an internship actually posted online, sometimes not. There are many ways then to go about it, to contact that company or institute. And then we will just follow up on a very regular basis, usually about a week or 2-week basis. I know that can sound kind of overwhelming because at the beginning, if you still need to do some research, if you're not quite sure where you want to be and what you want to do, but you have an idea. However, school always comes first, I say. That means we have time. We start really as soon as you have this internship scholarship secured. And I would say by March, the latest April, we will have a placement for you. And so over the course of time, according to your time schedule academically, we will work very intensely together. And I will help you communicate with your potential host. And again, with regard to placement, to payment, it was just a coincidence that last year's awardees all went into research and did not work in industry. It just ended up being like that. It's not that these students didn't look into industry. And as Anna pointed out, industry is much more willing to pay, has the money to pay. And so we are definitely going for that. But as Anna said, if your host cannot pay, we have a very generous scholarship to help you pay, that will pay for travel and living expenses. Yep, that is my.
Great, thank you, Antonia. Jan? Do you have any,
I think it's great to see this level of interest, right? With I think close to 60 participants in today's session, and so excellent to see that, and I think it's a unique opportunity, as you heard from the existing students, right? There, what they shared, and so I can just encourage you to apply and see this as a unique opportunity that probably I mean that you cannot easily replicate in the years post Stanford. So thanks for your interest.
Sheri?
I would say, building on what Antonio said about cost of living, food is far less expensive than in the Bay Area. And, a kind of go-to for many of the undergraduates that's inexpensive if you're a meat eater is something called a donor. And Haribo candy, if you're a fan of that, you will see more Haribo candy than you could even imagine. If you're a vegetarian, the options are actually more plentiful over the last decade too in finding alternatives. I would say housing is also less expensive, but it is not cheap in Munich or some of the big cities, but definitely less expensive than here. And it's a wonderful adventure. So, both in terms of technical and research challenges, but also living in a different culture and figuring out what we have in common and how are we different and how is all of that actually quite beautiful. So I, like Jan, think it's really great to see such interest. So thanks.
Wonderful. Do any of the panelists, the students, either previous interns or would-be interns, have anything to add?
Well, maybe you could say something where you will be going in January.
Yeah, sure. So my internship, so I actually took up a postdoctoral position with the supervisor that I worked with over my internship. So I think that was one of the positive outcomes of my internship. So I'll be finishing my PhD soon. at the end of this calendar year, and then going on to a postdoctoral position there. So I think that was, so it did help me a lot with my future career opportunity. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's great to hear. So I think we still have a few sort of questions that are basically logistical. So what I would ask you to do, if you are interested in applying, please check out the GRIP webpage. There's a whole bunch of information on the logistics of applications, how the application ought to be structured, deadlines, and all that. There's an online Q&A, which has the experiences that have been collated both from Antonia and from the previous internship holders about everything from, what's the best place to buy those fantastic bakery items, all the way to how to negotiate visa requirements if necessary, and everything in between. And there are also past participant reports, and it sort of gets you a sense of, what exactly the internship looked like and how people navigated some of these, the challenges of living in a different country. So I would strongly urge you to please check this all out. And I would also very much urge you to apply. And we look forward to reading your applications, answering any questions you might have, and hopefully interviewing you as interns. So thank you so much.